Today, we're going to be talking about a certain American politician that holds a special place in the hearts of almost everyone in the nation. From this description, you might be thinking about George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, or even John F. Kennedy, but you'd be wrong. Today, I'd like to highlight the importance of one of my personal favorite political bosses, William Meager Tweed, or better known as Boss Tweed. He was a notorious figure in the history of American politics throughout the 19th century. But how did he get to where he did? How about I take you back to the days of Little William? Tweed was born on April the 3rd of 1823 in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. His father was a third-generation Scottish Quaker whose career was in making chairs. At 11 years old, Tweed left school to pursue his father's trade, becoming an apprentice saddler. He picked up a few other jobs before joining the family business in full. However, as you might have guessed, he didn't stay a saddler forever. Eventually, Tweed and his friends organized a volunteer fire company. Now, one thing to note is that at the time, volunteer fire companies behaved somewhat like street gangs, sometimes getting into competition or actual fights with one another. In the America's Company No. 6, or the Big Six, Tweed became known for his axe-wielding violence, soon becoming the foreman. But once again, change came for Tweed as he was pressured by the chief engineer of the company into leaving. Not all hope was lost for Tweed as his political journey began. Volunteer fire crews were recruiting grounds for political parties at the time. His attention turned to the Democratic Party, and he actually ran for alderman of the 7th Ward. He lost his first election to the Whig candidate in 1850, but he got it on the second try in 1851. Soon, he had become associated with the 40 Thieves, the group of aldermen and assistant aldermen who were known as some of the most corrupt politicians of the city up until that point. The following years, he was elected into the House of Representatives, and not long after, he was running the 7th Ward for Tammany. The board had 6 Democrats and 6 Republicans, but Tweed usually bought off a Republican to secure Democrat votes. Striving for more, Tweed ran for sheriff, failing in 1861, and then eventually becoming the head of Tammany's General Committee in 1863. As the Grand Session, people had begun referring to him as Boss because he tightened his grip on power by making a small executive team to manage the club. Through his time as the head of Tammany's General Committee, he increased his income through extortion disguised as legal services. There were various other methods by which he took his money, one being the Tweed Ring, a circle of friends he elected into office. By the election of 1869, the Tweed Ring had control over New York politics. With this, he plundered more money through the city in taxes. In the words of Albert Bigelow Paine, his methods were described as simple and primitive. At this point in time, Tweed began to slip from power. After a few major scandals, the arguments and pursuit against Tweed by Thomas Nast in the New York Times became more popular. Eventually, one scandal led to Tammany's funds for the city being cut off. As unpaid workers marched to Tammany Hall, Tweed offered $50,000 from his pocket, but it wouldn't suffice. After the purse strings eventually loosened again, city departments that weren't under Tammany were allowed to borrow money to continue functioning, until it was found out that all the money was going directly back to Tweed, who was arrested shortly after. Tweed had a series of unsuccessful attempts to leave jail and get back into power. His final attempt ended with him being deported from Spain and sent back to the US on a warship. Tired and unable to pay the bill, Tweed testified about the inner workings of the ring and was sentenced to prison, where he would remain until he died from pneumonia a few years later.